Welcome to today's deep dive into one of the most iconic groups of mammals on Earth, the bears of the genus Ursus. From the snowy Arctic to the dense forests of North America and Europe, these animals are instantly recognizable. But beneath the surface, their evolutionary story is more complex than it first appears. Although traditionally grouped together as true bears, recent genetic research has revealed that Ursus may not be the tidy genus we once thought it was. From ancient hybridizations to unexpected relationships, the species within Ursus are full of surprises. The genus also offers a fascinating entry point into the broader story of bear evolution, a tale shaped by ice age migrations, rapid radiations, and shifting ecological roles. Where do the bears of Ursus fit within the larger group? And what happens when a genus turns out to be paraphyletic? If you'd like to learn more, check out the document in the description with research papers and image credits. Before we zoom in on the bears themselves, let's take a step back and ask, where do bears actually fit within the mammal family tree? All living bears belong to the order Carnivora, a diverse group of mammals that originally evolved to hunt or scavenge meat. But despite the name, not all carnivorans are strictly carnivores. In fact, many, including bears, are omnivores or even other dietary specialists. Carnivora is broadly divided into two major lineages: Feliformia, or the cat-like carnivores, including cats, hyenas, mongooses, and civets, and Caniformia, or the dog-like carnivores, a group that includes dogs, foxes, weasels, otters, raccoons, seals, and bears. So although bears might appear feline in some behaviours, they're firmly on the dog-like side of the tree. Genetically, they're closer to seals than to lions. From here, we can narrow our focus to the bear family itself, Ursidae. This family includes all living bears as well as several extinct groups. And it's typically divided into three major subfamilies. First, the Ailuropodinae, represented today by just one species, the giant panda. Second, the Tremarctinae, or short-faced bears, once widespread across the Americas, but now reduced to a single surviving species, the spectacled bear. And finally, the Ursinae, the subfamily that includes all other living bears. This is the group where our focus for today lies, so let's take a look at a simplified family tree of modern Ursinae. At first glance, this might look like a clean, well-behaved group. But there's a twist. The genus Ursus, as traditionally defined, is paraphyletic. It doesn't include all of its closest relatives. Despite being classified within Ursus, the Asian black bear is actually more closely related to the sun and sloth bears, despite them being placed in different genera. So today we'll begin our closer look at the so-called core Ursus species, the American black, brown, and polar bears, and ask what really unites them. How did these species evolve? And what can they tell us about the deeper history of bear evolution? I originally planned to cover all three in this video, but as the script came together, it quickly became clear that would be far too much ground to cover in one go. So in this episode, we'll focus on the American black and brown bears, with the polar bear getting a full video of its own next week. Before we go any further, let's take a moment to clarify a bit of terminology, because understanding it is key to grasping what makes Ursus so interesting. In evolutionary biology, a group of organisms is called monophyletic if it includes an ancestor and all of its descendants. This is the gold standard. It means the group reflects real evolutionary relationships. Among bears, the subfamily Ursinae is indeed monophyletic. It contains 3 living genera and all more closely related to each other than do any species outside the group. A group is paraphyletic when it includes an ancestor and some, but not all, of its descendants. That's the case with Ursus. The genus includes the brown, polar, and both black bears, but leaves out key descendants, the sun and sloth bears, despite their close relationship with the Asian black bear. To fix this, taxonomists have two main options: either include the sun and sloth bears in Ursus, or remove the Asian black bear from the genus. Finally, a group is polyphyletic when it includes species from different ancestors, grouped together not because of shared descent, but because of superficial similarities. Fortunately, the bears have managed to avoid this, but imagine grouping pandas and raccoons together, just because they're cute and have black and white fur. That sounds silly, but polyphyly was a real issue in taxonomy before genetics became widely available. A classic example is the now defunct mammal order Insectivora, which lumped together hedgehogs, moles, elephant shrews, tenrecs, and colugos, just because they were small innate insects. We now know that many of these similarities were the result of convergent evolution. Hedgehogs and moles are indeed fairly closely related, but elephant shrews and tenrecs are more closely related to elephants, while colugos are closer to primates. So when we say Ursus is paraphyletic, we're not saying its members don't share a common ancestor. They absolutely do. The issue is that not all of that ancestor's descendants are included, which creates a mismatch between the genus and the actual evolutionary tree. To understand how today's Ursus species came to be, we need to look back, not just in evolutionary terms, but in geological ones. The genus Ursus likely emerged around 5 million years ago, evolving from earlier bear lineages such as Ursivusa or Protarctos, small, forest-adapted omnivores that ranged across Eurasia and North America during the Miocene. But the real burst of diversification came later, during the Pleistocene, a period marked by repeated glacial cycles. These ice ages dramatically reshaped the planet's climate, sea levels, and habitats. As glaciers expanded, bear populations were pushed south into refugia, isolated pockets of survivable habitat. When the ice receded, bears expanded again, sometimes coming into contact with other populations and species. This cycle, repeated isolation and recontact, is one of the key drivers of Ursus evolution. It also helps explain the remarkable adaptability of modern bears. Many of their shared traits, omnivores, torpor, powerful builds, are not just ancestral features, but survival strategies for a world in flux honed during the ice ages. One of the most famous ice age bears is the cave bear, Ursus spelaeus, which once roamed Europe in large numbers. Fossils are so common in some regions that they were mistaken for dragon bones in antiquity. But they've also given us detailed insights into how these bears adapted to changing climates. For instance, cave bears tended to grow larger in colder periods, an adaptation to conserve heat, and would shrink slightly during warmer interglacials. On all fours, they stood around 1.5 meters or 5 feet tall, but rearing on their hind legs, they could reach up to a terrifying 3.5 meters or 11.5 feet tall, making them even larger than modern polar bears. The cave bear is just one example of a much broader prehistoric diversity. Ursus was once more species-rich than it is today. It's a genus shaped not just by evolution, but by extinction. And looking at where bears live today raises another question. What about Africa? Despite its immense mammalian diversity, Africa has no native bear species, a conspicuous gap. Fossil evidence suggests that early bears never gained a foothold south of the Sahara, likely due to climatic and ecological barriers. Even during glacial periods, the African tropics didn't offer the kind of cold-adapted seasonal environments that bears evolved to exploit elsewhere. So, while bears once ranged from Western Europe to Eastern Siberia, from Alaska to Mexico, even extending into South America, Africa remained largely off limits, a bear-shaped gap on the global map. Having explored the deep history of Ursus, from Miocene ancestors through Ice Age giants, let's now take a look at what unites the living members of this genus today. Despite their wide ranges and varied habitats, the core Ursus species share a suite of defining traits. All Ursus bears are large and powerfully built, designed more for strength than speed. They walk plantigrade, that is, with their entire foot on the ground, like humans, giving them stable, deliberate strides. Their tails are short and stubby, a reflection of their primarily ground-based lifestyles. While many bears are capable climbers, they don't rely on agility. Instead, they use strong, non-retractable claws for climbing, digging, and tearing food apart. These claws are an essential tool, and vary slightly in shape and length depending on the species' diet and behavior. Bears also possess one of the most acute senses of smell in the mammalian world, crucial for locating food, mates, or danger across vast territories. Their brains are relatively large for their body size, supporting complex memory, seasonal navigation, and even tool use in some cases. Socially, Ursus species are mostly solitary. Adults typically live alone, coming together only to mate, or in the case of females, to rear cubs. Perhaps the most iconic behaviour associated with bears is hibernation. There's some scientific debate about whether bears enter true hibernation or a lighter state called torpor. Both involve dormancy and a slowed metabolism, but hibernation is generally defined as deeper and less responsive. Bears don't fit that textbook definition perfectly, but what they do is functionally very similar, and most biologists today refer to it simply as hibernation, with caveats. Not all bears hibernate, but 3 of the 4 Ursus species do: the American black, brown, and Asian black bears. The exception is surprisingly the polar bear, despite living in the coldest environment of all. To prepare for hibernation, bears enter a phase called hyperphagia, a period of intense feeding to build up fat reserves. During hibernation, their body temperature drops, heart rate slows, from around 55 beats per minute to 9, and they remain in their dens for months without eating, drinking, urinating, or defecating. Perhaps most remarkably, females give birth during hibernation and are capable of waking to care for their newborn cubs. Their ability to balance dormancy with maternal care is one of the most extraordinary physiological feats in the mammal world. If this level of metabolic control seems almost too good to be true, you're not alone. Scientists are still studying how bears manage to avoid muscle wasting, bone loss, and dehydration during the period of prolonged inactivity. Another remarkable adaptation in bears is delayed implementation. This is a unique reproductive strategy where embryo development does not begin immediately after fertilization. Instead, the embryo lies dormant for several months before being implanted and beginning to grow. This delay is crucial. It ensures that the mother has sufficient fat reserves to survive hibernation and raise her cubs. If conditions are unfavorable, the embryo can be reabsorbed, allowing the mother to conserve her energy and avoid a pregnancy she may not survive. Despite these shared traits, each Ursus species has evolved its own unique adaptations, shaped by environment, geography, and time. To begin, we'll head to the forests of North America to meet the American black bear, the most basal member of the genus Ursus. The American black bear, Ursus americanus, is one of the most widespread and ecologically adaptable bears in the world. Found from Alaska and Canada to northern Mexico, it inhabits a wide variety of environments, from dense forests to semi-deserts to the outskirts of urban areas. So long as there's reliable food and cover, black bears can thrive. It's the smallest bear in North America, but that's relative. The American black bear is still one of the larger ursids globally, exceeded in size only by the brown and polar bears. Despite the name, not all black bears are black. This species exhibits the most extreme colour variation of any bear, with fur ranging from black to brown, cinnamon, reddish, and even bluish grey. The so-called Glacier bear of southeast Alaska is a rare and striking example with a pale silver coat. There are as many as 16 recognised subspecies of American black bear, shaped by geography and ecological pressures across the continent. These subspecies differ slightly in morphology, including body size, skull shape, and fur thickness, and may be adapted to local environments ranging from arid mountains to coastal rainforests. The high number of subspecies is due to their adaptable nature, with many specialising to the habitats they inhabit. Notable examples include the glacier bear of coastal Alaska, with its distinctive blue-grey fur, and the Kermode bear of British Columbia, sometimes called the spirit bear, in which a recessive gene produces white-coated individuals. Killer morphs like these can occur across populations, and not all coat variations reflect distinct subspecies. Even within a single litter, cubs can vary in colour, a testament to the species' genetic diversity. Their diet is omnivorous, but heavily plant-based, typically including berries, roots, acorns, grasses, and, occasionally, insects, carrion, or small animals. They are far more herbivorous than just about any other bear species, with the exception of the giant panda. American black bears are excellent climbers and swimmers. They often climb trees to forage or evade threats, though younger individuals are more agile than adults. They swim both for travel and pleasure, and will pursue fish in shallow waters when available. Though generally solitary, they may gather in groups when food is abundant, for instance at salmon streams or landfill sites. At such locations, they establish temporary dominance hierarchies, with the largest males at the top. They're also among the most vocal bear species, communicating with grunts, huffs, and jaw pops, especially between mothers and cubs. The American black bear is listed as least concern by the IUCN, although it has disappeared from parts of its historical range, particularly in Mexico and the southern United States. Overall populations are stable or increasing. Some of this range shift may be due to human pressures, but environmental factors like droughts and wildfires have also played a role. In fact, it's believed there may be more American black bears alive today than all other bear species combined, a testament to the evolutionary success of this adaptable ancient lineage. But this success isn't evenly shared. The East Mexican black bear, the southernmost subspecies, is critically endangered. Habitat loss, deforestation, and increasing conflict with humans have fragmented its range, leaving the few survivors struggling. Beyond their biology, American black bears have also left a lasting mark on human culture, particularly in North America. For many indigenous peoples, black bears are more than animals. They're spiritual figures, ancestors, and symbols of healing. In oral traditions from the Pacific Northwest to the eastern woodlands, they are treated with deep respect, often linked to ceremonies, kinship, and medicine. In modern popular culture, their image is often gentler still, from Teddy Roosevelt's famous refusal to shoot a captive bear, which led to the invention of the teddy bear, to Smokey Bear, the face of American wildfire prevention. Black bears have been cast as wise, approachable, even endearing animals. Of course, reality is more complex. Black bears are intelligent, adaptable omnivores, opportunists who can thrive in wild forests or suburban neighborhoods alike. Their success is a reflection not only of the evolutionary history, but of their ability to coexist with humans, for better or worse. But not all bears have had that luxury. In the more remote wildernesses of North America, Europe, and Asia lives a very different species, larger, more powerful, and often far less willing to retreat. Of all the true bears, none has matched the geographic reach of the brown bear, Ursus arctos. Today, they roam forests, tundra, and mountain ranges from Western Europe to Eastern Russia, and from the Arctic Circle to the mountains of Iran. A small but iconic population survives in North America, where they are often called grizzly bears. Brown bears are highly adaptable, both in body and behaviour. In fact, they are so ecologically variable that over a dozen subspecies have been described, ranging from the smaller forest-dwelling bears of Central Europe to the enormous Kodiak bears of Alaska. These island giants are among the largest terrestrial carnivores alive today, rivaled only by polar bears in size. While American black bears favour dense forests, brown bears thrive in a wider range of more open and rugged environments. They're found in alpine meadows, tundra, coastal plains, arid mountains, and even steppes, places where smaller or more forest-adapted bears would struggle. This preference of open terrain is part of why brown bears are less commonly seen near human settlements than their black bear cousins. Brown bears are also built differently. Though not always heavier than black bears, they are generally bulkier and more powerfully muscled. The most obvious distinction is the prominent shoulder hump, a mound of muscle used to power their immense forelimbs. This gives them exceptional digging strength, useful for unearthing roots, burrowing animals, or creating winter dens. Their diet is incredibly varied and shifts dramatically with the seasons and local ecology. While they're omnivores like all of Ursus, some brown bear populations are heavily carnivorous, preying on ungulates or scavenging carrion. Others live largely on plants, berries, or nuts. Perhaps the most famous feeding behaviour occurs during salmon runs in Alaska and the Russian Far East, where brown bears gather at rivers to gorge on spawning fish. These temporary aggregations offer a rare glimpse of social tolerance in an otherwise solitary species, with dominant individuals often claiming the best fishing spots while others wait downstream or feed on leftovers. Brown bears are generally more assertive and less likely to avoid conflict than American black bears, likely shaped by their open habitats, larger size, and fewer natural predators. They are also surprisingly intelligent animals. Their large brains support complex behaviours, including long-term memory, seasonal navigation, and even rare examples of tool use. In one notable case, a brown bear was observed dragging a stump beneath a hanging food item, then climbing onto it to reach the reward, a clear sign of planning and problem solving. While not common in the wild, such behaviour highlights just how cognitively capable these animals can be when faced with challenges. Despite their wide range and adaptability, brown bears face a very fragmented conservation picture. Globally, the species is listed as least concerned by the IUCN, but this masks significant regional declines. In some areas, like parts of Alaska, Canada, and Russia, brown bear populations are healthy and even expanding. These remote, resource-rich habitats have allowed large numbers to persist with relatively low human interference. But in much of Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia, brown bears have been heavily reduced or extirpated due to habitat loss, persecution, and conflict with livestock and rural communities. In Western Europe, only a few small populations remain, including the Cantabrian Mountains of Spain and the Apennines in Italy. In the Alps, bears have been reintroduced or recolonized in recent decades. These groups remain vulnerable, especially due to genetic isolation and low population numbers. In the contiguous United States, the grizzly bear has also seen a dramatic reduction of its historical range. Once found across the western half of the continent, it is now largely confined to pockets in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and a small part of Washington. Conservation efforts, including legal protections and habitat corridors, have led to some recovery, but human-wildlife conflict remains a key challenge. Brown bears are survivors, shaped by the Ice Age and capable of thriving in extreme conditions. But as human landscapes expand, it's not cold or hunger that threatens them the most, it's fragmentation, isolation, and the narrowing margins where wild animals can still live freely. And few wild animals have loomed as large in the human imagination as the brown bear. Across its vast range, it has been feared, hunted, worshipped, and mythologized. A creature that straddles the boundary between predator and symbol. In indigenous cultures of North America, particularly among First Nations and Native Alaskan communities, the bear often holds a position of deep spiritual respect. Grizzlies are seen as powerful beings, sometimes ancestors, sometimes teachers, and stories about their strength and wisdom are woven into oral traditions. In northern Eurasia, the brown bear plays an equally enduring role. In pre-Christian Europe, bears were associated with warrior spirits and natural cycles of death and rebirth. In Finland, the bear was so sacred it was often referred to by euphemisms, the honey eater, or the old man of the forest, to avoid attracting its attention. In fact, this may even be the origin of the modern word bear, which is believed to be a heavily derived term meaning the brown one. But not all relationships were reverent. As human settlements expanded into bear territory, conflict became more common. In medieval Europe, brown bears were hunted relentlessly, both for their perceived threat and as a display of power. In parts of the world, they were captured for blood sports or spectacle, held in pits or made to fight dogs. Even today, the bear's image remains potent. It is used as a national symbol in Russia, as a conservation mascot in Europe, and as a subject of folklore, fiction, and fear. In all of this, the brown bear reflects a deeper tension in how we view wild animals, as both kindred and killer, as part of nature and as something to control. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of bears. From the forests of Europe to the rivers of Alaska, these animals are more than just iconic omnivores. They're powerful, adaptable survivors shaped by ice ages, isolation, and shifting landscapes. Both the American black bear and the brown bear reveal just how much change can occur within a single species, and how a lineage can diversify across continents, cultures, and climates. When we look closely at their adaptations, behavior, and relationships to other bears, we uncover a much deeper narrative about resilience and complexity in the natural world. So, if this video sparked your curiosity, don't let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, and keep learning. There's still so much to learn about the world's rare and remarkable species, and the more we uncover, the better chance we have of protecting them. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to join us next time, we'll be heading to the Arctic to explore the brown bear's closest relative, a specialist so well adapted to ice that it became a different species altogether. If there's another fascinating animal you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comments below.